How have you been?
I've been busy, good. It's peak polo season, so matching work schedule with polo schedule and making sure that I get to do both um, is a bit difficult. But it's been an exciting. March is always exciting. There's not much that people know, but during March or February, March, we have like 50 international polo players that come into the country.
Wow.
These are amazing polo players. Obviously, I don't play at that level because I just started, but the games here are crazy. And I think we don't give enough coverage. So I've been trying to talk about how great these players are, how easily they come into Pakistan, how much they love being here. They bring their families and you get to host them. So it's really, really nice.
That's nice to hear. A lot of things don't get the kind of coverage that they should. We focus on the negative a lot more than we focus on the positive, unfortunately.
Of course. And one of our polo players, his name is Hissam Ali Haider. A lot of people know him. He is Asia's best polo player. And he is incredible. And so, he walks around and I'm like, if this was a cricketer, people would mob him. So I brought him to COLABS and I introduced him to everyone at COLABS. He's a great friend as well. And so people were like, oh, really? And polo is a very difficult sport. You think it's easy, but it really isn't. And the kind of injury, like yesterday, my friend got hit right here with the ball and luckily survived and got back on the horse and finished the match. He's just like, put something to stop the bleeding. And the guy's like, you need stitches. He's like, no, I can't get off. I have to. So they put a bandage on his head. He was bleeding and he went into play. It's crazy. These guys are crazy.
Okay, shall we begin?
Excited.
I thought we had, but anyway. We get parts of this as well because it's interesting and we could, it's good to talk about things that are important for Pakistan. So we may add that. But let's formally start our conversation. So, hi, Fatima, how are you?
Hi, Jehan. I'm so blessed to be here. This is amazing. I feel, I'm a big fan, so I feel a little bit, shy, but great to be here.
No, I think of you as anything but shy. You're one of the people that a lot of young women look up to and aspire to be like. And although you've been here such a short time after coming back from Dubai, but people have already heard about you and you have engaged with a lot of them. So it's good to see that happening. But let's go back to your journey with Careem. So tell us a little bit about it and your expansion plans and the things you were able to accomplish as being part of the core Careem team in Dubai.
Okay. So my Careem story is one of the most interesting stories in my life. And a lot of people know that I was the head of expansion and I went to a lot of countries and expanded. Here's what they don't know. I was at a dead-end job. I was working as the head of operations at this corporate company in Dubai, and I hated every bit of it. And so I was talking to people and I said, hey, I want to get out of this job. I have a 6-month probation period. The probation period is about to end and I don't want to stay here. So a friend of mine said, hey, you've done a lot of stuff in logistics, which I had previously. Uber's coming to Dubai, and I think you'd be the right fit for Uber. How about I get you in touch with somebody that I know that works at Uber and get you an interview? And I was like, okay, sure. So I started looking up Uber, and every time I would type Uber, Careem would pop up. So I was like, what's Careem? And, it wasn't very clear what Careem was, but it said that the CEO is a Pakistani guy named Mudassir Sheikha. And, the other founder is the guy named Magnus, who, fell in love with a Palestinian American woman and decided to stay in the Middle East. And I was like, hey, interesting. I mean, Magnus's wife is an amazing woman. So I was like, let me reach out to them. So I wrote them a 2-liner email saying, hey guys, here's what I've done. I've worked in logistics. I'm interested in working for you. And meanwhile, somebody's trying to get me a meeting with Uber. And they replied to me right away and they said, hey, why don't you come in? So I go in, I have this amazing interview with Magnus for 2 hours, another 2.5-hour interview with Mudassir, which is like a conversation. And I was shocked. I was like, how can somebody like working so much? So I said, I want to work here. This was 2013. They hadn't even raised their first round, like the 1.7 that they raised from STC hadn't been closed yet. So Magnus and Mudassir's like, hey, we really like you. Could you come for like 1/100th of your salary and come in the call center, because that's the only position we can give you at the moment, or we can afford. However, if you stay with us and if the company grows, you'll grow with us. So I took up that position. I was the head of operations at a previous company. I had a car, fuel allowance, an assistant, at the age of 27. And I was like, I really want to work with these two guys. So I took up a job in their call center, which was called the call center. Now it's called, customer experience and captain experience. So I took up a job in their call center. And on my first day, they're like, hey, you're not experienced, so you only take driver calls. Oh. No customer calls, because you're not trained. So I took driver calls for the first 6 weeks at Careem. Meanwhile, the funding was going on, and then I got to different positions. But my journey started there. Then I was a fleet manager, which meant I took care of the drivers. I did that for 1.5 years before Mudassir said, okay, go fix something somewhere. And I went to fix a country or city, and eventually made it to the head of expansion 2.5 years into it. But in those 2.5 years, I'd worked in every single department at Careem. I never said no. You can ask Mudassir, Magnus. I used to work 22 hours a day for the first 2 years. I didn't take a day off. I would come in on Sundays. I loved working there so much that I didn't see head to tail. Like I was, I think, half my size when I joined Careem, and I doubled in size while I was there because I would sit 22 hours a day and just work. So I think as I became, and the head of expansion role also came because Mudassir said, go launch Pakistan. I said, no, I don't want to go to Pakistan. I said, I'm really, not the kind of person that would fit in Pakistan. I've had a bad experience. I'm not married. People make fun of me. I didn't speak Urdu very well back then. Now I've taken classes to be able to speak it really well. And so he sent me, he insisted a couple of times, because Mudassir doesn't force you to do anything. And I eventually came to Pakistan. One, that began my love of Pakistan. That also began my love of expanding. So what I did was I went to Pakistan. I launched Pakistan. I was here for 9 months because it was a big task launching Pakistan. And I had Junaid Iqbal with me. I then went to Turkey. I went to Morocco. I went to Egypt. I did a bunch of launching everywhere. And the plan usually was, once Uber was there, how do we get to these places before Uber gets to these places? Because actually it was a market grab. But one of the funniest stories, or one of the funnest stories that Mudassir also likes to tell, is how I was when I was expanding. So I was sitting in Lahore, and we found out that Uber is going to launch in Islamabad in a week. And so it was the weekend. We were all supposed to be off. And I called Mudassir. I said, I want to launch in Islamabad. He's like, no, don't launch in Islamabad. I called Junaid. I was like, Junaid, please. He was partying in Egypt. I was like, not partying. He was working, but still partying. I was like, hey, can you please let me launch Islamabad? He said no. So I got the team together. I snuck a trip to Islamabad. I set everything in order. So I just had to press a button and Islamabad would be launched. So I then told them, hey, I've done all the work. Can I please launch Islamabad? They said no. I launched Islamabad.
Oh. And what was their reaction?
So Islamabad, with under Umar Zabit, obviously, his leadership, became the fastest growing city. It broke all records. It got us amazing revenue. And after that, whenever I said, hey, I want to launch this place, they were like, okay. But I was so rebellious, and I was so sure that Uber was coming, which they were. Unfortunately, during that time, a bombing had happened, and all of Uber's people were evacuated from Pakistan. Their head of Pakistan at that time hadn't been hired, so it was being run by a foreigner. And so we got that edge, and we did really, really well in Islamabad. And I think to date, Islamabad's one of my favorite stories. What other things I did was I would launch 5 cities simultaneously. So I did that in Egypt one day. I launched 4 simultaneously. So Junaid calls me and he's like, hey, come to Pakistan and do the same in Pakistan. So I had a month to do the same in Pakistan. And so I rushed over and did it. I've taken 268 flights in 2 years.
Wow.
Just to make sure that I was able to expand. And one of the things that's really important here is to give a shout out to Mudassir. There was a lot of question on whether like a girl should be going to all these areas alone and launching and stuff. And he always said, listen, if anyone can do what Fatima can do, they can have the position. I believe Fatima can do this. And as we're talking about break the bias, one of the greatest things I've had is his support in being the expansion person. It was a fun job. Everyone really wanted it. But he really believed in me and stood by me, even when people said, oh, I snuck off to Afghanistan once without telling anyone to launch. They found out much later that I'd gone, and I got into a lot of trouble from a lot of people. When I was in Turkey to launch Turkey, you remember there was a non-coup that happened and Turkey shut down for a few days.
Yes.
I was in Turkey trying to launch Turkey then, and that happened. So there's a lot of war stories. But the strategy was simple. We would decide how many cities we wanted to launch in the year. We would give Mudassir some, things on, some metrics on whether we should launch there or not. I would go in, do the prep work, hire the team, train the team, and then exit and go to the next city. So there's a lot of fun.
So that's great. I mean, that Mudassir allowed you to do what he thought you were capable of doing and what he had seen that you were capable of doing.
Yes.
I think that shows that male champions who believe in you are very important when you are sort of growing in your career, because he could have held you back. I don't think he could have held you back because you wouldn't have let him, but he could have not championed you. He could have not supported you. So it's great to hear that, that he's such a champion of women, although I think we can see that in all the women that we meet within Careem. But tell me, so how, you dealt a lot with the captains early on. How was their reaction to dealing with a woman, taking instructions from a woman? How was that? I think that would be interesting to know.
So I was always very conscious. I used to dress a certain way before I came to Careem. And one day I was told, like, maybe you should dress a little different. And, the rebellious me was like, why should I dress different? But I realized that if I wanted to blend in and if I really wanted to get to know the drivers, I should do this. I was very blessed. I talked to them like they were my peers. I never talked down to drivers. And honestly speaking, if you meet drivers right now as well, some of them who misbehave, yes, they would complain about me, but I had a really nice time with them. I would sit next to them. I would eat with them. I would actually make them feel like I am their real support. And so I ended up not having an issue. I've never had an issue where I could say, oh, I was harassed or looked weirdly at by a driver, which I'm very lucky about. But it was also from day one. I spoke to them in Urdu. I didn't keep a distance between them. I would sit in the middle and they'd be all around me. And I wouldn't say something like, oh, drivers. So the story goes, I made my dad meet Mudassir once in my life. And he goes to Mudassir and says, यार तू अच्छा भला McKinsey में काम कर रहा था, इतनी अच्छी नौकरी थी, ये क्या छोड़ के तूने टैक्सी ड्राइवरों के साथ काम शुरू कर दिया? And I'm like, oh my God. And he would say that again and again. So would other people. When I had the fleet manager job, I was one of the few female fleet managers at Careem. But I never looked at myself as a female. When I was talking to them, all I cared about was showing them that I care about you, your money, and getting you the fair rights. And I spoke for them and I was the voice for them. And so I don't think that they noticed that I was giving them orders. And I always make it sound like I'm here to serve you. Even as a leader, when I meet my team, I tell them that my job is to serve you so you can work to the best of your potential. So when I was at KeepTruckin, I was, managing 2,000 plus people. 75% of them were men. And I was able to do really well there as well, because essentially I don't have a very bossy attitude. I get really, when I get angry, I'm disappointed. So I just show them disappointment. I don't raise my voice. And so I got along really well with the drivers. And recently, at least, Faisal Chaudhry from Zain Capital, he was in a Careem. I can show you this text message later on. And he said, dude, I'm in a Careem. And the captain says, hey, do you know Fatima Mazhar? She used to be at Careem and she now works at COLABS. I literally cried because I've been out of Careem for such a long time. And he said, when she was here, Careem was great. And this has happened quite a few times. Somebody will sit in a Careem and they'll know that they know somebody knows me. They'll say something very nice. Mudassir sent me multiple messages when I was traveling that, hey, this driver is saying hi to you. So I didn't have that problem.
That is so important that people remembered, and especially the captains, if they remember you, that means they thought you were one of them, right? And you were speaking for them, you were their voice. And that's
I
so
really,
great. Yeah.
I think I was just on a panel the other day and they said, what can we do to, what advice do you have for women? I said, when I'm asked, like, what is it like to be a woman leader? I step back and say, I'm a leader. I'm not a woman or a man leader. When they say, how is it to be, you know, a woman worker? I say, I just look at my work, let my work speak for myself. It took a while to get here. I am 40 years old, right? So it took me a while to get here and a lot of work on myself. But now I just look at my work and see what I can do, produce, and that's what should matter. And that's what mattered to Junaid Iqbal. That's what mattered to Magnus Olson. That's what mattered to, you know, Shoaib Makani, Mudassir. These are the people that I worked with. So I've been kind of blessed in this journey. And I think Mudassir, Junaid, Magnus, and Shoaib and Ubaid, the founders of KeepTruckin, their support in the sense that they just looked at my work has gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's extremely important. So now let's move to where you are now, which is COLABS.
Yes.
So what is your vision, and I guess a collective vision of yours and Umar's, for COLABS, you know, to turn it into a really tech-driven business? I think it already is, but what is the vision going forward?
Look, what we noticed or what we talked about, so I think it's important to let the COLABS story out there as well. Right. How I got to COLABS, because then you'll see a string of incidences that have led me to where I sit. Yeah. So essentially, I had founded Dukaan.pk, and then I'd left Dukaan.pk within 4 months of being there. And I was a bit devastated. Obviously, when you founded something and there's a big, everyone knows about it, and then you have to step away. So I went to COLABS to get an office to figure out what I wanted to do next. I knew I wanted to be in Pakistan. So I was sitting there and I met Umar, who actually knew my dad and my brother from Abraj days, because my dad and brother were at Abraj. And so he started talking to me about what he's doing, what he's making, and I got really excited. And he said, come work with me. And I said, no. So it took him about 3 months to convince me. But I told him I'll do it if we get VC funding and we can actually, you know, grow really fast, because that's when we'll be able to make an impact. And if we get to being more tech oriented. So now the idea is that we're in the final stages of raising. You'll be hearing an announcement soon, inshallah.
The rumors are already out there.
Yes. I'm just waiting for the official announcement.
Yeah.
But it took a good 6 months. It took 3 months to convince Umar that this is the route that we should take, because now we have 3 main things at COLABS, right? We have one, we're going to rent you the space, and we're going to make you collaborate. Then we have, you know, our business SaaS solution. This is where tech gets involved. We're going to have a tech platform, which lets all these startups do everything that they want through a tech platform, through COLABS, where, you know, if you want to do payroll, you don't have to hire a whole team. Let tech do that for you. So you can focus on your real thing. You don't have to care about generators, workplace, you know, the toilet's not working. Let us do that for you. Let our attendants do that for you. So all of this will be available on a tech platform. And then obviously there's GoGrow, which, you know, we're very excited with, inshallah, to partner with you. The talks have started, where we let these people collaborate. But also collaborate can happen this way, but also with a platform. So there's a lot of tech being worked on for the next few years where, you know, your phone or your COLABS app is going to connect you to everyone. It's going to let you do your payroll. It's going to let you enter into the building. It's going to let you do everything. So that's the idea. And the vision is to have, you know, most freelancers and startups sit together so they can actually talk to each other. The vibe at COLABS is great. Everyone's talking to everyone. They're discussing their work. You know, there's panels going on. And I want to see that for all of Pakistan. Faisalabad, by the way, you know, some of the best engineers are now coming out of Humza and Gilgit, by the way. Did you know? Yes. Like we started hiring them. I want to have a COLABS there so they can actually sit and collaborate. With remote becoming a reality, it's not very easy to sit at home and connect to the internet and do this. We want to provide spaces to these people. So that's the whole vision to get to where we want to get to. And we want to have 100,000 seats in the next 5 years, inshallah.
Wow, that's great. So tell me, you're also an advisor to several startups and you've seen some of the challenges that they face. Can you talk a little bit about them and how maybe we can collectively help them overcome those challenges?
Yes. So I think the biggest challenge at the moment that I see with startups that I'm talking to, one, most of them are first-time founders. And there's not a lot of training out there. There's not a lot of support out there for founders. You know what I mean? So they come in, they've been able to raise, because obviously money is a little easier. I'm not going to say easy, but a little easier than it was before. Yes. There's money coming in. So first, when they're raising, they don't know much about, how to value your company, how much equity to give away, how to negotiate, who to bring in. So that's something that we should talk about. The next thing is how to then act like a co-founder. You know what I mean? Either they get too proud because they've raised a lot around, or they're not able to hype themselves up a little bit. We need to do that. So I think there should be a founders class. Then the one thing that I keep speaking about is hiring for startups is very hard. You know what I mean? There's a lot of talent there, but abhi bhi jab I get some people, they're like, "Hamari JD bataye." I'm like, this is a startup. The JD does not really matter. I'm going to tell you.
And it changes over time.
It changes over time. So maybe we talk to the government, maybe we talk to schools, and we start changing the curriculum a little bit, because aap itne focus hote ki humne physics padhani hai, ye padhani hai, so when they come up, engineering to theek hai. Engineering ke alawa, most of the roles have become really agile. And as startups start becoming the norm, and a lot of people from MNCs are coming into startups, how do you get that talent? There's a lot of them are crying for talent. And I've heard that there's a shortage of engineering talent, which I thought would never be the case, because har koi engineer ban raha hai. So I think one, support system for founders, some training for founders, which they're willing to take. And the most important thing is, how do we get our youth to be trained so that they can easily be hired into the startup ecosystem and make the difference that they want to make. And other than that, I think maybe like what to do once you've raised, how to execute. I think ideas sabke paas hain. Mudassir used to call me chief execution officer, because inke ideas hote the na, so they would give it to me to execute. And I think there's not a lot of attention being given to execution. Ideas are there. How do you execute? So get people that are in operations, that think analytically and can do this. So I think the biggest challenge is, how do we prepare our youth? And I think you can help there. You have a lot of connections with governments. We can do a lot of courses together, maybe at COLABS, with Catalyst, to see how do we prepare, what kind of talent are you looking for, and how do we prepare for that?
Yeah, I think several people are looking at this problem, because it's not just the startups, it's also the tech companies, it's also the multinationals. Everybody's growing, and that's a good sign, but everybody needs the same people, the same kind of people. And so we need to open that resource pool, expand it. And also a lot of young people want to go overseas, and we shouldn't be stopping them. We should just be increasing the size of the pool. So tell me now, working in the startup space, you've seen that mental health is a big issue, because people are working long hours. And you yourself said you were working 22 hours at a stretch. And, hustling takes a lot out of you. How do we handle that? How do we work with the founders to ensure that that aspect of their lives is taken care of also?
That's a really difficult question. I think what I did was, I recently did 2 different podcasts, and one of them is not out yet, but one of them is out. And I talked in detail about my mental health challenges. And so somebody, like my family, came around and asked me, what was the point of putting that up there? You've put your dirty laundry up there. Some of my friends are like, are you an attention-seeking person? Like, why would you talk about that? And so I'm very confident that I'm doing this because I want other people to speak up. And I'm showing this because I went through clinical depression alone, got out of it alone. And only after getting out of it was I able to tell my family and my friends 3 years later that, hey, by the way, I was clinically depressed. I went to the doctor. They said, you're clinically depressed. I took care of it myself and I came out of it. And it took a while.
But not everyone is able to do that, right?
That's exactly
the point. You have to be very strong, and you have to know exactly what needs to be done.
But the point is, I spoke to people and look at the reaction of people. They called me attention seeking. People said there's no thing as mental health. Men are not allowed to be weak and depressed. So I think this is one question that I don't have an answer for, because I don't know how to encourage people, because when they do speak up, this is the kind of things that you go through. Now, I'm mentally very strong. So I told my very close relative that, you don't have to follow me. You don't have to sneakily see whatever I'm posting. Just get off my social media, as long as my parents are okay. And I took their permission, and it took them a while to give me that permission as well, but I took their permission. But I think speaking about it, people who are confident to speak about it should speak about it. And I think in founders, it is so important that either they get life coaches, which is something that I want to really get for them, or they get maybe some therapists. Getting therapy is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Now, where are good therapists in Pakistan? That I don't know. But even something like a life coach. I got a life coach. So when I went to MIT, they give you a life coach. They give you like about 7 sessions free, and then they tell you can continue paying them. And that really helped you. They really look at every aspect of your life. But I think mental health, if not sorted, is going to trickle into your work, and it's going to ruin everything that you've done. And I've seen, I can actually spot people who need it, but I don't say anything, because how do you encourage them to actually speak about it? But have you spoken to other people? Are there any other ideas? What do you think do you think that's something that we can normalize in Pakistan?
So I think we need to be reaching out to people. And I think as long as they know that there is someone around that they can come and talk to. So we can't be therapists. We're not qualified to be therapists.
We're not qualified.
But at least we can hear them out, right? And maybe suggest to them that they should talk to so-and-so and have a longer conversation. And we've done this, when I was heading the Nest, we had actually 2 psychologists who used to come and sit there and listen to people's problems, advise them, and then later on took on that paid job to continue with them even when they had left the Nest, and some of them moved to Dubai, somebody moved to other parts of Karachi, but they kept that conversation going. And it was so, I didn't realize there was so much of a need until then. I think there is, there's a startup that works on mental health and is making that connection between people who need advice and psychologists and therapists across the world, not just in Pakistan. Yeah. I think that's important, and it's available. She makes sure that these therapists can speak in Urdu and in English so that people are more comfortable. And people, as they feel that if they don't have to sit face to face, they're more open. So maybe these online mechanisms will work, but it will take a long time, because the mental perception, as you said, is, oh, why do I need to see a therapist? And I don't have an issue. I'm not crazy. And, mental health is not about craziness. All of us go through difficult times, and there are times that we need help. Just like if you have a cough or a cold, you need to see a doctor at some stage, right? So if you have this problem, you can really cause yourself a lot of harm if you don't see a specialist. I think this is something that needs to be out there. People need to be talking about it so that it becomes normal. Right now, it's not.
So one of the things that I loved about KeepTruckin is where I worked as the head of Pakistan, is that they really looked out for their employees. And what they did was they provided free mental health for everyone. It was part of the benefit. So they had signed up with this online company that matches you to therapists. And, when we started, people were very apprehensive about the Pakistan team, that are they going to sign up? Are they going to use it? They don't think, but because this was online, this was anonymous, nobody was really tracking it. What we could only track was location and gender. And you'd be surprised that Pakistan, obviously we had a bigger population, so we had a weighted average, but Pakistan used it the most, and men in Pakistan used it the most. And you realize that if this is provided, so maybe we can talk to companies and say, hey, why don't you provide this as a service? There are, there's a startup here now, but there's startups or there are companies in the US and UK that do it, and they'll provide it in Pakistan as well. If we make it mandatory for companies here, especially the big ones right now, that they provide this benefit, that would really help. I did sign up and I did have a conversation, but I felt more comfortable sitting face to face. There was also this, I still am a very emotional person, and I'd blurt out whatever I was feeling in the office to a colleague anytime. And there's this Turkish colleague that we had, and she took me on a side one time and she said, listen, you have great potential, but you're going to ruin it if you keep like sobbing and like telling your problems to everyone. Here's my advice for you. Get a therapist. Go talk to all your problems with a therapist. Work is work. Come here, work. If there's a disagreement at work, discuss that disagreement. Or if there's something work related, discuss that. But anything personal. She said, nobody really cares about your problems. At the end of the day, half of them maybe care. Half of them are going to be happy you have problems because they have problems, but they're not talking about it. So she really told me, she gave me numbers as well. She said, go. She said she's been doing this for 11 years where she has a therapist. And it has really helped her. So people actually are getting there, but we just need to create more awareness. Now that I say it, I'm going to try and get this at COLABS for our team. Thanks for reminding.
Good idea. Good idea. So tell me, there are traditional, let's go back to women, although I know you say we are all, professionals, and so we shouldn't really be looking at us. But women have some traditional pressures which keep them from pursuing whatever it is they want to, whether it's hobbies, whether it's their dreams to start a company, continue a company. What message would you have for them?
I would say that you only have one life. And, when you come, you're alone. When you go back, you're alone. And you have yourself to answer to. When you realize that you might have regrets, then, what's the point? You get one life. So I would say, go out there, pursue your dreams. You're going to fail. What's the worst that can happen? I failed so many times, I can't even count, but look at where I am. And I got up every single time. Now you do have pressures. So explain to people. It wasn't easy for me to be who I am without having to constantly explain to my parents that this is what I really wanted. And you know what? Your parents love you. So if you're passionate and if you actually do want to do it, they will give in. And please only care about your parents. Don't care about the rest of the world. At the end of the day, it is your parents or your spouse or your children that matter. Nobody else really matters. So go out there and pursue your dreams. Otherwise, you're going to really regret it. One life.
Good advice. Good advice. Now, my last question to you, because I know we're limited by time, that you pursue a number of very unusual hobbies, polo, flying a plane. You have 6 horses, I believe. Tell me, how did you get into all these areas? That's not what people associate with, with women or anybody. Actually, most young people are not into these areas at all. So how did you get into it, and what does it do for you?
So when I was growing up, when people asked me, what do you want to be? I used to say pilot. Right. Okay. And that didn't change. A lot of people change. No, I wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't do anything about it because my parents said, you have to study. So my dad was in the army, and I am really thankful because I got a lot of my skills from, being an army brat, as we call ourselves, the kids. I started riding when I was I was 9 years old. I started riding. Wow. So I've always been fond of riding. Now, what happens is both these hobbies, flying and polo, require a lot of money. So I didn't have the money, but I always did want to, the flying was in the back burner. It wasn't something that I always wanted to learn how to play polo, but it was super expensive. So now when I came to Pakistan and Corona hit and there was nothing to do and I'd made a fair bit of money, I said, what do I want to do? Because I was really scared that my mental health was going to take a big toll. Staying at home all day, I didn't want to go back into that. And I saw a friend of mine who was learning how to play polo in Lahore. And so I just called him and I said, hey, where is this happening? And luckily, I started learning doing that. And then while I was at the polo ground, a bunch of these people one of them was a flying instructor and the rest of them were learning how to fly. And I'm like, oh my God, God is so kind. So I actually got into that. Now, polo is super, super hard, but getting the ability to fly is very hard. You have to do tons of paperwork, tons of this, but because there was Corona and there was a lot of time, I was able to do it. And this flying has stopped because Walton Airport has been taken over by the government to commercialize. So I'm trying to find another place to continue, but polo, yes. And the 6 horses are necessary because if you want to play polo, you have to have minimum 6 horses to be able to play.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, you do, because there's 4 rounds in a polo. They're called chakkars. And so any horse can break or something. So you need 4 horses minimum, and for break-ins and stuff, 6. And they're my babies. there's a story about how I came downstairs one day and told my parents, congratulations, your grandparents. And, I didn't even realize what I was saying. And my parents, their heart stopped and they tell the story again and again. They're like, what? And I was like, oh, no, I bought a horse and the horse's name is Fatima Mazhar. And they don't let me let go of that story. Sometimes whenever I'm at home, I don't think. So they always ask me, how are you a professional when you're so stupid at home? I'm like, I don't think when I'm at home.
I'm just chilling.
Yes. But I also want to say that it is never too late. I always wanted to get an MBA. I couldn't get one. And I, got it at the age of 37. Because I said I was one of the older ones there and I didn't really care. This is when I had the time and the money to be able to do it. I started playing polo really late. I'm not going to go much far. I'm going to play very limited polo, small scale polo. But hey, I got to really do what my passion was. So it's never too late. You can always convince yourself and your parents. And it honestly gets easier.
It gets easier. Yeah.
It gets
easier. Yeah. And people realize that, you're going to do what you're going to do. So might as well let you, right?
Yes.
Thanks so much, Fatma. That was such an interesting conversation. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of learning that people will get from this. And hopefully, I plan to be in Lahore starting tomorrow. So hopefully we'll catch up.
Yes, please come over.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.